All right. Our next presenter tonight is Gary Kuehn. From an engineer formerly studying ice mechanics, he's transitioned easily into the study and pursuit of lower density forms while heli skiing, ski touring, and ski mountaineering. And now he's a sledder. He was just mentioning that one of his winter projects is overcoming a very cautious right thumb on his two-stroke snowmobile. He's an IFMGA guide working with heli ski operations in New Zealand and Alaska. He forecasts for the Mountain Safety Council in New Zealand, and he's an instructor with the American Avalanche Institute. One of his bases is in Seattle, and he's currently on melted snow in Tasmania, playing on rivers and working with the University of Tasmania School of Medicine. Tonight, Gary's going to share with us a story about Professor Ian Snape, a friend and colleague from the Australian Antarctic Program. Ian wanted to model the decision-making processes of mountain guides to see how they survive and thrive in complex, high-risk environments. For 2 seasons, Ian followed Gary around and vice versa. In 2012, the two were skiing in Turkish mountains in a region near Iraq and Syria. On the last run of his trip, Gary chose a steep descent through some rock bands. A few errors caused him to blow the first turn, leading to a fall that knocked him unconscious and injured. Fortunately, he was with a competent team who kept him alive and evac'd him via a military helicopter for a quick diversion to a local hospital where his condition stabilized. His presentation outlines some of the key findings from Ian's modeling project, as well as his recovery from traumatic brain injury. His story transects resilience and recovery in outdoor activities with links to leadership, neuroplasticity, and the theory of complexity. Welcome, Gary.
Hello, I just got a note that my screen sharing wasn't working quite right.
All right. Want to give it a go again? Something's happening. All right, we're seeing your full screen now with your notes.
Okay. Let's just start all over. And how's that? Same?
Yeah, still seeing your notes.
All right.
Could you swap displays? Perhaps. There's a button on the top left corner once you start presenting. Looking good. Nice.
Okay. Excellent. And I'm seeing that too. Well, thanks for the introduction. And yeah, your introduction obviously ties it into Rob's talk in that he kind of filled people in. I blew it in the backcountry. And I'll just start from here and hopefully engage people in one of the last sessions this evening. I will tell you about the story of an accident, and it did happen ski touring in a war zone in Turkey. And it will touch on this session's theme of decision making, but also neuroplasticity and resiliency. It was preceded with the modeling project started in 2010 by Dr. Ian Snape to model decision-making in complex environments. And it has takeaways both from Ian's projects and my experience that I hope will increase the resourcefulness, both retrospectively and proactively. I met Ian while working with the Australian Antarctic Program, and he was a program leader and in the executive. His proposal was to model the decision-making of exemplars in complex domains, and one such domain was guiding in avalanche terrain. He wanted to translate this into government, business, and other domains where decision-making was complex. Why modeling? Well, a quote from Ian, "There's a big difference between what people say they do and what they actually do. It's even more the case when you have exemplars who have many years of deep experience. They will be integrating, synthesizing, gathering and processing information and patterns from a lifetime of experience, and it is not linear." That's when you need a different approach to understand and learn from people like that, and that is where modeling comes in. Ian would watch my actions and ask questions, lots of open, well-crafted questions. When we were in Chamonix and I looked at the mountains, Ian asks, "What just happened there?" I had imagined the wind angle and strength at mid-station. Last night, a squall came through and I can see the rain snow line. I was unconsciously putting the snowpack onto the terrain at various elevations and aspects across the mountain. I'd consider weather, past, present, and forecast, and most complex of all, I'd consider myself, my partners, and others. I would think of the avalanche types that were possible, characterize them by location, sensitivity, and size. And through observations and tests, I would think, what can I find to disprove my model? Now that was the surface of modeling. The conceptual model of avalanche hazard was developed from how experts think and act. And it was described in the very first NSAW talk this year by Sarah Carpenter. And since 2013, when you look at the avalanche forecasts by NWAC, you see a graphical display of avalanche problems. Past the obvious, Ian learned skill acquisition through modeling from John Grinder, who developed neurolinguistic programming as a means of replicating expert performance. Under the surface was the neuroscience of learning, and one of the most important findings was the use of mirror neurons. This is about both copying and embodied visualization, the two being slightly different, in that embodied visualization is using your whole body. This is important when modeling risk, as you can put embodied feelings into scenarios without exposing yourself. Ian would observe and model my micro movements, my posture, patterns, and efficiencies that would save time and energy. He observed my responses and interactions with other people and sensed my adaptations. He would check if what I said actually matched my actions. By contemporary definition in neuroscience, we recognize there are three connected brains in the human body. The head brain, everyone knows about, the heart brain, and the gut brain. These together form an axis that is actually our decision-making. We need to realize that all senses are involved in decision-making. It could be images, smells, feelings, sounds, even taste. Increasing our awareness of unconscious signals from all these brains is a good safety net for staying alive, particularly getting strong yes and no signals. Springtime, 2012. Both Ian and I had work trips in Europe, and Lucy, who loves adventure and ski touring, was with me in Europe. Turkey intrigued us as a new cultural and snowy mountains destination, and Mt Ararat, that was tucked near the Iranian border, was an obvious goal. There was terrain nearby for a warm-up and alternatives. Legally, for Ararat, we needed a local guide, and both logistically and linguistically, it'd be beneficial. So with Yildirim and Kadia, we became a group of 5 on the mountain. After a warm-up, we headed to Ararat, a spectacular mountain, biblical fame at a little over 5,000 meters. On Ararat, the weather did not hold. We turned around 50 to 100 meters below what my GPS said was the summit. Pretty sure the view would be the same, but we'd probably be crawling. After Ararat, we continued to explore new terrain, this time further south, close to the borders of Iran and Iraq. Access was uncertain, and we wanted to avoid military action zones. This led us to checking in with military officials near the junction of a few valleys. They pointed us up a valley with a white stripe of snow in their backyard. So we headed on up. Ian and Lucy followed me to the last line of the day, and the culmination of a few errors led to my last memory being a feeling of resistance under the heel of my right ski on entry, which was my first partial turn. I tumbled the fall line, and it took Ian a few minutes to get to me. I was unresponsive. At times, I became responsive to voice. Ian tasked Lucy with letting Yildirim and Katia know of my fall. And this is a video from Yildirim's GoPro when they arrived where I was being cared for.
I'm sure that we will find the helicopter, okay?
Yeah, great.
1 second. Okay, Ian, take this is clear. Just press it, okay? Use it. It's okay. Don't think about it now. Katya, just in case, I leave the rope here. Keep him warm. Keep him warm now.
So that's the most stable place I can see. Okay.
Just one thing.
This frame is looking almost up the fall line. It was a discontinuous diagonal line with small rock steps. The avalanche hazard was low, yet it was a line with hazards that needed to be negotiated upright, not unconsciously as a pinball. My only 3 memories from the evacuation are Ian coaching me in breathing, Ian telling me to be as stiff as I could when I got lifted or moved, and I knew exactly why. And I remember seeing the inside of a helicopter and thinking, I am missing an amazing cultural opportunity. I'd never seen so many weapons or rounds of ammo, and there were 2 soldiers inside, one very bloody. It turns out one was now a Kurdish POW who had shot the now bloody Turkish soldier. For my rescuers, my departure gave them time.
It was such a relief that we got you off the mountain that I had some tears and I cried. Oh, phew, he's off the mountain, he's safe. He's going to a hospital, wherever it is. And it lasted, that relief lasted very small time. And I went, no, Lucy, you're on to the next phase now. We've got to do the next thing.
When discussing the event with Ian, interestingly, he said, up until the moment of the accident, the situation was complex. Immediately when the accident happened, the situation became obvious and one of best practice. Obvious was the standard wilderness first aid primary survey, DRABC. It's a well thought out protocol and it works. Ian delegated to others and he chose his words to me carefully. In reviewing the GoPro, Ian's actions matched his words. My next memory was getting stapled in a local hospital. No anesthetic was used, and that made it more memorable. I had bruises all over my body, with the exception of my back. 2 of the 4 backpack straps broke, and the remaining 2 kept it on just enough. Surprisingly, no broken bones. Ian and Lucy cared for me with the outside assistance of a friend and emergency room doctor, Paul Scott. He will answer my sat phone calls at any time. And this was the first time it was not me asking for a consult, but I was the patient. When he heard, his first action was asking his wife if his passport was valid. A truly amazing friend. Global Rescue agreed with Dr. Scott, and it was super reassuring for Ian and Lucy to have independent experts in agreement. I was briefed to act alert and healthy enough to fly, and we flew to Istanbul for more x-rays and a CT scan, then on to the States. In the States, I reverted to my pre-injury comfort places, and I believe this is quite common. I was lucky that mine were staying busy and learning. In less than 1 month, I was remodeling a garage in Seattle. I was totally exhausted as my body was healing. My friends recognized that, told me and helped, no doubt while subtly monitoring me too. While doing this, I extensively researched recovery from traumatic brain injury, or TBI, and tested a variety of ideas. In less than 3 months, I was in New Zealand heli-ski guiding. My body felt fine, but I had concerns regarding mental overload. I was open with them about my accident and recovery, and they said that made it easy for them to be open with me. They would identify behavior patterns often before I would and openly tell me. I really encouraged it. Again, it was good friends helping my recovery by being open, honest, and not withholding. They said that in my first year back, little things would increase my frustration more than normal, likely similar to the increased danger often associated post-TBI. Interestingly, 6 years after, even though I had functioned back, a QEEG still detected I had TBI deficit in some of my neuronal pathways, as seen by the red in the upper left-hand image. The image on the right is 6 months later after neurofeedback training, and it shows minimal TBI effects. This relates to neuroplasticity and the whole modeling process. You can do it preventatively, and you can use whole body visualization and other aspects for deliberate post-accident recovery. Some key takeaways from risky business modeling applicable to any context are: state matters enormously. My fundamental error was not maintaining a safe state for being in consequential terrain in the mountains. State is physiology, neurology, biochemistry, and microbiome. It's the whole interconnected system. I had lost my calibration and big picture awareness. And from Spencer's talk, it sounds like COVID might have contributed to a less than optimal state for some of the people that were involved in accidents that he mentioned. Build models and test the environment around you. Without a suitable state, I was unable to update my models and test safely. Another takeaway is proactive resilience, or in hindsight, I would have known my healthy baseline. In my recovery, I was being compared to the average 48-year-old American male. And the data they had was primarily from people who were ill or injured. I had no desire to recover to that average. Maintain holistic fitness, recognizing that the mind is embodied. For both victims and potential rescuers, and that can be any of us, maintaining fitness minimizes the effects from an accident and improves being resilient or recovery. And Lucy says it super well. I have to practice in small ways in my everyday life so I am prepared when the big events happen. And wrap up bonus theme that'll tie me back to Rob is choose your partners wisely. Let's make it teammates. Choose your teammates wisely. So consider yourself, put yourself in the boots of a rescuer, Ian or Lucy, or even in the boots of the semi-conscious Gary. How can you be more resilient? The results from the entire risky business modeling project with references can be found in a book by Ian, Resilience by Design. Also aware that this is being recorded in Seattle audience. A whole lot of people are just going to want references. So I've got a few here that you can screenshot or get on the recording also. And I am super keen for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. That was sounds like quite an experience you had, and a good way of tying it all together. I really like the comment you mentioned about you being open and honest about your injury, and how, with your colleagues, and how you may be more, easily frustrated or whatever. I think there's something to be said there around that honest self-assessment that we should be doing, and communicating with our partners, in order to form a real team. Unfortunately, it's 7:55, so I don't know that we can field a ton of or any questions actually at this point, but we'd be happy to direct those over towards you. If anyone has any questions, you can fill them out in the Q&A or the chat on this, and then we can get those over to Gary and connect you all with Gary. So I appreciate your time tonight. Thank
Okay.
you very much, Gary.
No worries.
All right, we'll see you soon.